Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to decode the new rulebook for how our towns and cities actually get built. You know, it's this invisible code that shapes our daily lives, and there's a new proposal that wants to rewrite the whole thing from the ground up.
So, let's kick things off with a question that I bet feels pretty familiar to a lot of us. Why is it that our cities so often mean we're stuck in traffic, housing is crazy expensive, and there's just not enough green space? It might seem like it's all just random chaos, but believe it or not, there's a hidden logic behind it all.
And the answer? Well, it lies in that invisible code we mentioned, this really complex web of planning rules that decides where we can build, what we can build, and how we can build it. But there's a new plan on the table that aims to swap all that complexity for a clear new blueprint.
Right, so you've got sprawl, speculation, and those super long commutes. These are the classic signs of a system that's, well, just not working anymore. Unchecked growth pushes our cities out, not up. And that leads to sprawling suburbs, it encourages people to just buy up land on the edges, hoping to make a profit, and it forces so many of us into these long, draining commutes. Funnily enough, these were the exact same problems Japan was dealing with way back in the 1970s.
Okay, to really get to the heart of this problem, we've got to stop thinking about a city as just a place. We need to start seeing it for what it is, a system. And it's a system that's under some massive, constant pressure.
Now this slide is so cool because it helps us actually see that pressure. Think about a city's booming downtown core like a giant hydraulic press. As land values and wealth go up, it creates this intense pressure pushing down on the working class, which is shown here as a fluid. Now, if you don't have any barriers, that pressure literally forces people out to the edges, to the cheaper areas with no services, and boom, you get sprawl.
So how in the world do you manage all that hydraulic pressure without it just springing chaotic leaks all over the place? Well, Japan engineered a solution, a metaphorical urban dam.
The main idea is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. You just draw a hard line in the sand. You strictly separate the areas you've decided are for growth from the ones you want to preserve. That's it.
And this slide, it breaks down the two key parts of that dam. On one side, you have the Urbanization Promoting Area, or UPA. Think of that as the reservoir, where all the growth is meant to go. And on the other side is the Urbanization Control Area, or UCA. That's your stop valve. It's where sprawl gets stopped dead in its tracks.
So what makes this whole thing work is how crystal clear that division is. The UPA is methodically prepped for growth. So investments in things like streets and sewage, they're top priority. But the UCA, that's a hard wall. Urbanization is flat out prohibited. By making it obvious that no new infrastructure is coming, you basically kill the incentive for anyone to buy up land on the edge of the city just to sit on it.
Okay, so how does the Japanese model from the 70s connect to what's happening today? Well, let's jump over to Aotearoa in New Zealand, which is seriously looking at adapting this very blueprint for its own proposed system. But it's not a direct copy-paste. It comes with some really important local twists.
The foundation of this whole new system is a set of National Standardized Zones, or NSZs, and their inspiration is what you're looking at right here, Japan's 13 base zones. They create this simple, easy-to-read rulebook for development that's the same across the entire country, no confusion.
This table gives us a fantastic snapshot of how Aotearoa is taking that logic and running with it. So, for example, our high-density transit corridors, which say you have to build at least 6 stories high, that's basically the equivalent of Japan's quasi-residential zone. And in industrial zones, things like housing and schools are a no-go, which makes perfect sense for keeping people safe.
But here's the really key difference. Unlike Japan, which is highly urbanized, Aotearoa's economy is all about agriculture. So this new plan introduces specific rural zones that you just won't find in the Japanese model. They're designed to protect everything from large-scale farming and mixed rural activities to even extractive industries like mining and forestry.
Another really smart adaptation in the Aotearoa plan is this idea called the newcomer principle. It's a rule that's designed to solve arguments over land use before they can even get started. Basically, if you're the one introducing a new type of activity into an area, you're the one who has to pay to manage any conflicts that it might cause.
Okay, so we've covered the big picture system, from urban dams to these newcomer rules. But what would all this actually mean for your daily life? What would it feel like to live in a city that's run by this new code?
Let's start with a big focus on green space, which is governed by this simple little rule of 3s. The first rule is all about your personal space. Every single home has to have a view of at least 3 trees. It's a simple idea,
but it's meant to weave nature right into the city itself.
Second, let's zoom out from your house to the whole neighborhood. That greenery isn't just a nice to have. The plan actually mandates that every neighborhood has to maintain a minimum of 30% tree canopy cover. This makes sure that the benefits of having trees around, like shade and cleaner air, are spread out for everyone.
And the third rule, it makes getting to a public green space a basic right. Every single resident must live within 300 meters of a park. That's just a short walk away. So you put them all together, and these 3 rules create this really thoughtful, layered approach to bringing nature into our cities.
And hey, remember that newcomer principle? This is exactly how it would work in the real world. Let's say a developer wants to build new apartments right next to a busy, noisy 24/7 port. Well, under this rule, the developer, the newcomer, has to foot the bill to soundproof those new homes. So what's the result? The port's vital economic engine is protected from noise complaints, and the new residents get to live in a quiet, healthy home. It's a win-win.
So, when we zoom out and pull all these different threads together, from the urban dams to the green space rules, what's the one big idea that's holding it all together?
The big idea here is a really fundamental shift in thinking. It says it right there on the slide. The goal is designing a cohesive system. This means we're moving away from getting bogged down in rules for individual buildings, and instead, we're trying to engineer a citywide system that intelligently balances growth, livability, and economic health.
And this all brings us to the final and maybe the most important question. A well-engineered city sounds great, right? It promises efficiency, stability, predictability. But in designing a system that's so structured, what's the trade-off? As we chase after all that order, what might we lose of that organic, spontaneous, and yeah, sometimes chaotic energy that makes a city feel truly alive?